In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most gracious. Assalamu alaikum, dear audience. Hope you are all good. Today, my topic is related to the modern English play, A Doll's House. This is written by Henrik Ibsen. This play is basically a modern play because it is set in the 20th century, almost mid of the 20th century. Then it is also called a feministic play because it is related to the theme of feminism. There are many elements of feminism which we will discuss in detail. Then this play is also declared as modern tragedy. It has the features of the modern tragedy as compared to the classical and the tragedies of Shakespeare. Anyhow, we start. We will have a critical study of the play in this video. Let's start. The play is the story of a family of Helmers, Torvald Helmer, Nora Helmer, and their children. They both pass a very good life. Torvald is a bank manager and recently he got promotion. And the family is very happy. So they enjoy the Christmas with a new spirit. Nora, on the other hand, is a very, very innocent and very active lady. She does everything for the sake of the family. Nora and Torvald, they live happily with their children. And their life, it goes on. Then we have other characters in the play, like their neighbor, Dr. Rank. Dr. Rank is a very important character in the play. He's always present in the most important actions. On the other hand, we have Krogstad and Mrs. Lind. They once used to love one another. Anyhow, we will discuss their love affair and the consequence of that love and what happens with them ultimately later on. A Doll's House is a very different kind of play. This play in the modern age is considered as a unique play because when other playwrights were attempting in the usual way, most of the plays they were having the happy ending. Most of them, they were comedies. So in such time, Henrik Ibsen, he attempted an untraditional play, which has unhappy ending. So ultimately, making this play as a tragedy. Some of the important themes of this tragedy, we discussed them. Number one is the theme of sacrifice. Nora Helmer is a lady who sacrifices many things for her family, especially for her husband. Once in the past, when her husband was very ill and the doctor suggested a different kind of treatment for him, that he must go to some resort for the climatic change so that he could restore his health. Now, Nora financially was very weak in those days. So she arranged money by some unfair means. She asked for debt from Krogstad and then she committed the crime of forgery just to survive her husband in this troublesome and fatal condition. On the other hand, Mrs. Lind sacrificed her love for the sake of her father, for the sake of her brothers and sisters. She rejected Krogstad just on the basis because he was poor and she had a lot of financial needs for the family. So she sacrificed her love. When we come to the nurse at the house of Helmers, she was teaching and looking after the children of Helmers. that is Torvald Helmer and Nora Helmer. But ironically, she was not looking after her own children in that way. Why? Because she was having some financial needs, especially for her children. So the play has many episodes of sacrifices. Then we have very important theme, that is the theme of duties. Duties towards parents on the one hand and duties towards children on the other hand. As far as duties towards parents were concerned, Nora looked after her father who was very ill. But especially the credit goes to Mrs. Lynn, who looks after her father in the very troublesome condition. The same are the duties of parents towards their children. Nora did everything good for the sake of good training and education of her children. So these are the themes that are related to the welfare of the family. Then there is the theme of deception, the difference between appearance and reality. Nora, no doubt, she indirectly and unconsciously, she deceives her husband by committing the act of forgery. But it was all done for the sake of the family. She wanted to disclose the secret many times to Thorvald, but she was afraid because she knows her husband very much. He was an arrogant personality, so he could harm her. He could announce some kind of separation and divorce for her because she knows that Thorvald loves his reputation and status more than everything else, even more than Nora, more than his life partner Nora. So she was afraid. So when Krogstad gives entry into the family, she was really afraid that this man may disclose the identity, he may disclose the secret, and this can be very, very fatal and dangerous for the family. So she becomes so much nervous that she is ready even to commit suicide. Anyhow, later on, she discloses the secret of the very crime to Mrs. Lane. And Mrs. Lane, she consoles her that if Robert is really your husband, you can share the secret to him. Why? Because the man will realize that everything was done for his sake. Anyhow, ultimately, Torvald could not afford this because his reputation was more important. He was a proud man. So instead of consoling or supporting Nora, he rather changes his mind and he rebukes her. He does not like the very act of forgery. Rather, he gives her some moral lessons. You have done wrong and you are not a good mother, so you cannot train my children in the better way. So it's better that I could that you can live with me in future, but it's better not to affect my children in that way. Anyhow, this really hurted Nora, and she decided to leave the family, Torvald, even her children, for the sake of her for the sake of the search of her self-identity, so that she could go outside and she could face the world and she could recognize herself who actually she was. Earlier, she was a baby doll when she was living with her parents, and lately she was a doll wife when she was living with her husband. So now she wants to know who she really was. When we come to the very important features of feminism, feminism basically was a movement in the 20th century that claimed the equal rights for women, because women were suppressed in the patriarchal society. They were really suppressed and they were not given their rights in property, in jobs, in many other fields of life. So Henrik Ibsen was a feminist, but rather he was more a humanist. He tries this very important theme in his play. So women were considered weaker financially, physically, in many other respects. Even they were considered weak in their judgment. That's why Towell gives not so much importance to his wife. Always he thinks himself superior and Nora as inferior. So Nora depends for financial needs on Towell and also for some other very important decisions of the family. So this was a very important problem of the society. So Mrs. Lind sacrifices her love for the sake of her family. So this was very tragic for her as well. On the other hand, the nurse at the home of Nora, what she does, she did everything for the sake of her family, and she looks after other people, children, for the sake of the fulfillment of the financial needs. Nora was not understood in the right way, rather she was misunderstood by her husband. So later on, her husband punished her in that way. He could not understand her. She thought, she never thought that her husband would behave in this way. So this was very shocking for Nora. So ultimately she decides to leave home for the search of her real identity in the society. When we have a look on the play as a modern tragedy, so remember this is not a tragedy in the traditional sense, the way the tragedies of Shakespeare are, the way the classical tragedies of Romans and Greeks are. Rather, this is a light kind of tragedy, you can say. It's an untraditional tragedy, and it is less tragic than those dark and horrible tragedies that used to have melodramatic situations. Then this is not the tragedy of a nation, because the protagonist is not a king, not a general, not a judicial magistrate. Okay, for example, Hamlet was the prince of Denmark, Macbeth was a great nobleman and general, and Othello was another noble personality. Brutus was the judicial magistrate of England, King Lear was the king of England. So their tragedies were the tragedies of the nation. But the modern tragedies, they are the individual tragedies. For example, the tragedy of Nora, where there is the disintegration of the family. This is in fact the tragedy of Nora herself, or her family at least. Okay, so they are not of so much serious nature as the classical tragedies were. So even the characters are less evil as compared to the characters of the classical tragedies or the ancient tragedies. The characters, they are less evil, they are not so bloody, they are not so hypocrites as really they were. But there are some evil deeds like crimes, deceiving others, deceptions, okay, hypocrisies of that way, okay, and exploitation. For example, exploitation of Krogstad. He tries to exploit Nora for getting good position in the office and also some other benefits. So there are crimes, deceptions, etc. Like forgery, that is basically a crime. Legally, it has some punishment in the civil laws. So these are some of the light crimes that are in the modern tragedy. Then modern tragedy, in fact, this is a light kind of tragedy, and it has light effects on the individual as well as on the family. Okay, I told you earlier that this play, A Doll's House, is basically a unique kind of play. It has unhappy kind of ending when there were many other plays of the time. Mostly they were the comedies, and ultimately what happens that the play is declared as a tragedy because there's no murder, there's no bloodshed, etc. Okay, but in fact there is the disintegration of the family. When mother leaves the home, or father even, the family is disintegrated. Now how would children survive? There's a big question mark. How would Tobald live his coming life? There's a big question mark. I mean, Nora, when she left the family, in fact, has deserted them on their own, and she is now outside. She leaves the house for the world, and now she will have a new start. In that sense, the play has optimistic kind of end, that no doubt this disintegration of the family. But one thing is very important, that the lady is going to start a new life where she is independent, where she is free, where she is not a doll. She's a woman. She has a very important status. She has a very important personality, where she has dignity of her own, and this dignity she has to prove, and for this she has to leave all those bounds, all those captivities which really disturbed her personality. So this is a great message for all those women who are treated by their husbands and fathers and brothers and sons in this way. They may have their own way to prove themselves, that yes, we are something, we have a status, we have an honorable status in the society. So this they will find, like, when they will actually go out and know themselves in the right way. So this is the message of Henrik Ibsen, that women, when they will be independent, when they will go and face the world, they will show that they are something. This is their status in society. So they will be independent, they will be dignified, and they will be a great way for other women, a kind of message for others, to live such a life where you never sacrifice your identity, because that is very important. So this was a critical study of the play. That's all for today. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.